Dallas Cowboys wide receiver CeeDee Lamb has another huge performance on Thursday Night Football. Where should he come in your Dynasty ranks? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can check out her work at Pro Football Focus. She also is the managing editor of the Behind the Steel Curtain website. Does wears so many different hats. Absolutely incredible. Kate, today we're going to break down Thursday Night Football, Cowboys Seahawks, and which was a wild game. One of the better ones that we've had in prime time. Cowboys win 41-35. I want to start with CeeDee Lamb. 12 catches for 116 yards and a touchdown. Also added in 2 carries for 30 yards in this game. What were your takeaways watching CeeDee Lamb in this one?
CeeDee Lamb looks like a bona fide elite top 10, top 5, maybe top 3 Dynasty wide receiver. And Marcus, like heading into the season, I said over and over again, like my biggest question is, can CeeDee Lamb be that guy? Like I wasn't sure if he could be that guy, to be totally honest. I wasn't sure if he was absolutely elite. He ranks 3rd in PFF receiving grade, 4th in yards per route run, averaging 4.5 yards after the catch per reception, just reeling in absolutely everything. And I mean, being targeted on almost 28% of his routes run, all of those metrics are absolutely elite. And I think we need to have a real conversation. How many wide receivers in this league do you really want over Justin Jefferson or over CeeDee Lamb at this point? Justin Jefferson, I don't know. I don't think Justin Jefferson is at a point. This is just probably recency bias, but I think you can arguably have the conversation about CeeDee Lamb versus Jamar Chase versus Justin Jefferson at this point, which coming into the season, you would have been cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs if you even posed the question. So that's where I'm kind of at with CeeDee Lamb.
Here's where I'm at. I would still take Jefferson over CeeDee Lamb, but if somebody offered me Jefferson for CeeDee Lamb, I'm having like a 3-hour debate with myself about it. Like that's just where we're at. CeeDee Lamb on the year, he's over 1,200 yards already, over 8 touchdowns. Kate, in his last 7 games, this is what kind of pace he is on. Last 7 games, 63 catches, 824 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns. When you include his rushing stats, because for whatever reason, the Cowboys have made it a point to get him like 2 or 3 carries a game. 887 total yards and 7 touchdowns in his last 7 games. I mean, it's ridiculous right now. And let's have the conversation. You and I are both in agreement that we would still take Justin Jefferson over CeeDee Lamb. The next one is
Chase, though.
Jamar Chase. Where do you stand on that right now?
I think it's extremely reasonable to lean CeeDee Lamb at this point, just given the long-term health concerns. We've seen several season-ending injuries from Joe Burrow. I still think Joe Burrow, better NFL quarterback than Dak, but still think Dak grossly underrated as an NFL quarterback.
Well, Ian Burrow's a lot younger. We should also mention
absolutely. That. But Dak Prescott, by all accounts, with Mike McCarthy of all people, seems to be in his absolute prime. He is playing the best football of his career. Might just go down as the NFL MVP this year. He is the face of the Cowboys franchise. I think CeeDee Lamb is going to be right there alongside him. I kind of have this feeling that there's maybe a little bit more safety and a little bit more I think there are fewer unknowns, right? What happens next year? Do they get T. Higgins an extension done? Because when they're both on the field, we've seen the dynamic shift back and forth between Jamar
Mhm.
Chase, T. Higgins. Um, if they don't get a deal done with T. Higgins, what do they do at the wide receiver 2 position? When does Joe Burrow get fully healthy? Does his health last? Like, it just feels like there are a lot of questions about the Cincinnati Bengals right now, and I don't have as many of those questions about the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That one's a coin flip for me as well. I probably lean CD just because it seems like the Cowboys have gotten him more consistently involved in the offense. Also doesn't hurt that the Cowboys play in the dome and the Bengals play in the
Mhm.
AFC North, where you're going to be playing a lot of bad weather games. So when you get to
A lot of
playoff
tough
time, a
defenses.
lot of tough defense, at least historically, some tough defenses.
Mhm.
My next question for you, Kate, regarding CeeDee Lamb before we move on is AJ Brown is currently being drafted ahead of him, as is Bijan Robinson. Would you take Bijan over CeeDee Lamb in your dynasty league?
I think I would,
Okay,
just because again, like, very young running back, right? He's 21 years old. He's in his first NFL season, not racking up touches in year 1 like we saw with, a guy like Ezekiel Elliott coming out of the draft, where, he racks up 300 plus touches, like, immediately out of the gate. Bijan's like the rare unicorn for me, but other than Bijan, I think AJ Brown, we have 2 years younger for CeeDee Lamb. Again, not a ton of question marks for me in the Philadelphia offense. I think we kind of know their identity, but yeah, like, if the tiebreaker between CeeDee Lamb and AJ Brown is age, I think at this point both of
sure.
them have proven a relatively similar ceiling. And
You're happy
CeeDee
with either of
Lamb's
them.
Yeah, and CeeDee Lamb's floor might be just a little bit safer, I think, as Dak's top target. So again, like, you're going to be happy with either of these guys, but if you have to have a tiebreaker between the two, I guess I'll take the younger guy because
Sure.
why not?
Um, by the way, I agree with you on Bijan. I would take Bijan over CD Lamb just because of the positional value. We know that running backs typically aren't getting second contracts right now. But even if you look at like the next 4 years, you got to believe that the next 4 years and the next 4 years of Bijan for CD Lamb and Bijan are probably going to line up. Just give me the running back that's got a chance to finish as the RB1 every week
Yeah.
because of the positional value. Completely agree. Kate, I want to talk a little bit about the Seahawks. So I want to talk about Jackson Smith and Jigba, who had a better game than what the box score suggests. But before we do that, I do want to have a conversation about Jake Ferguson, who continues to look better and better each week. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That is $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options available, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. You can go bet on Dak Prescott to win the MVP award. Seems like that's a pretty good bet right now, given how he played against the Seahawks. You could even bet on Deron Bland, who actually saw his odds go down in the Defensive Player of the Year award, despite getting an interception. There's some reasons why maybe his odds dropped a little bit. But visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We wanted to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Kate, I want to talk about Jackson Smith and Jigba in just a second, but really quickly, Jake Ferguson, 6 for 77 and a touchdown, has just under 500 yards on the season, 5 touchdowns. hasn't been overly consistent, but you see the flashes.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to talk about Jake Ferguson. Marcus, we were like all over Jake Ferguson like glue this offseason. We were all in on this former fourth round pick. Keep in mind, Jake Ferguson just heading into his second NFL season, and he looks far mature beyond a second year tight end. I know we're in the realm of era, right? Where, NFL tight ends like Sam Laporta, who we talked about on Thursday's show, like Dalton Kincaid, who kind of come in and there's not that acclimation period because you're spending, less time, generally speaking, in the blocking role, and they're just kind of acclimating to the receiver position. But in terms of like looking at these young NFL tight ends, who have kind of like a pretty complete role, I'm having a hard time coming up with a guy that I'm as enamored with as Jake Ferguson. And I need to ask you about that because you're the Dallas Cowboys expert. Everybody check on Locked On Cowboys. But I'm great. It's shameless plug for my co-host here who does a fantastic job. But as somebody who is in tune with the team, you talked a lot in the preseason about how Dak is very impressed with Jake Ferguson in terms of his work ethic, in terms of that connection that they're working to build. They were training together plenty off season, which you love to see that especially from a young tight end here. But from a Cowboys perspective, there are about 18 million tight ends on the roster. They just invested in Luke Schoonmaker. Am I getting too enamored with the player that is Jake Ferguson and ignoring the red flags that, there might be some other tight ends in the conversation this year?
So the first thing is we know that this tight end role in Dallas has always been very fruitful, right? Whether that's been Dalton Schultz, who, in the 3 years that he was kind of the featured guy, was super productive. Dak is just really good at feeding his number one tight end. I like Jake Ferguson. I think he's a good player. You saw in one of the biggest moments of the game last night, he throws a back shoulder fade to Jake Ferguson one-on-one against an all-pro safety in Jamal Adams, and there's just complete trust there. The difference for me between like Ferguson and some of the other guys up there is just volume. Like Ferguson's just never going to be the main guy in the passing attack the way that a Travis Kelce or a Mark Andrews or maybe a Dalton Kincaid will be down the road because the Cowboys have CeeDee Lamb. But I think once you get past that tier of dynasty tight end, Laporta, Kelce, Andrews, Hawkinson, Kincaid, we can have legit conversations. And you mentioned the other tight ends on the roster. The Cowboys drafted Luke Schoonmaker to be like this hybrid blocker receiver to use in certain situations. I think he's a really good backup. He's not going to be the guy to replace Ferguson. So let's quickly run through some of these guys. Like, would you rather have George Kittle at 30 years old or Jake Ferguson right now in your dynasty league?
I'll take Jake Ferguson.
Yeah. Would you rather have Dallas Goedert or Ferguson?
Ooh,
I lean Goddard there for me.
Yeah, I think I lean Goddard there. The age difference not as significant here, and the stability. Yeah.
Trey McBride, Evan Ingram, Luke Musgrave.
I'll take Jake Ferguson over all of them.
The only one that gives me a little bit of pause is Luke Musgrave, but I'm there. Now, here, this next one hurts my soul, Kate. Jake Ferguson or Kyle Pitts?
Oh, Marcus.
I know.
Oh, no.
Let's just be honest, though. I mean, Ferguson outproducing Kyle Pitts this year pretty significantly.
Handedly.
And kind of outproduced him last year as a rookie as well.
Oh, Marcus. Oh, no.
Give me the upside.
I mean, if just to be clear, like if we covered up the name Kyle Pitts and we covered up Jake Ferguson, like I understand from a dynasty perspective and from a traits perspective, that's hands down Kyle Pitts. But from a situational standpoint, like you mentioned the tier break between Jake Ferguson and, some of those primary receiving tight ends, right? But I still look at Jake Ferguson. It seems like he's kind of the number 2 option,
I
especially
would
around the
agree.
red zone for this
Would agree.
this team. I'm looking at Kyle Pitts, and it's kind of a revolving door, and it's kind of a revolving door that they perpetuated themselves by flushing this offense with weapons that they don't know how to use properly. So, like, situationally,
No,
Jake
it's
Ferguson has a pretty big edge in my mind. But, maybe this
it's the talent.
conversation would be very different if it weren't Arthur Smith at head coach.
Here's the way that I'm looking at this. As of right now, I lean Pitts. But if we go into the 2024 season and it's Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ritter throwing to Kyle Pitts again next year, I'm going to just take Ferguson. I'm hoping either the Falcons move him or the Falcons go out and get an actual NFL quarterback to get him the ball, because you're right. Like, production wise, it's not close. Let's talk
If
about, go
Just to
ahead.
be clear, if it's Taylor Heineke throwing the ball next year for the Atlanta Falcons, that team is relegated to the USFL.
I
I'm
feel like
making an executive decision, y'all.
Yeah. Can't disagree. Let's talk about Seattle really quickly. DK Metcalf, 6 for 134, 3 touchdowns. What a huge game from him. I want to talk about Jackson Smith and Jigba, 7 for 62 on 11 targets. So, I mean, you're
Yeah.
talking about 13 PPR points, whatever. Fine flex play. Could have been much bigger. He had a touchdown, like a 50-yard touchdown that was taken off the board because the ball moved like a fraction of a millimeter when it hit the ground.
I thought that was a little ticky-tacky
So did I.
myself.
Now, on that play, he drew a pass interference that got him down to the 1-yard line, and then Metcalf scored in the next play. My takeaway was JSN is coming. Like, his time in this offense, you can see, like, he's already the second best receiver on this offense. It's only a matter of time before he really goes off.
I think that is 100% accurate. It feels like every week we watch him, he just looks a little bit more like a professional NFL wide receiver.
Mhm.
Like, that just seems to be kind of where we're at. Again, like, we have talked endlessly about the draft profile, the fact that this was a guy who, primarily played out of the slot at OSU, but I think he's got versatility all over the field. This was a guy that I thought was very pro ready coming out, but he just kind of had to wait for his time in a relatively crowded offense. And that brings me to my next point, Marcus. I think we're starting to see the decline of Tyler Lockett. As much as it hurts me, I don't want to be overreactionary, Marcus. I really don't. But it feels like we're starting to see Tyler Lockett just slow down a little bit, right? Like, we're seeing a decline. This is a career low 10.3 yards per reception, career low yards after the catch, career low, second lowest of his career yards per route run, lowest passer rating when targeted of his career. Like, every single efficiency metric that you look at for Tyler Lockett tells you that we might be seeing that eventual decline. And yeah, he just turned 31 years old. So that shouldn't be overly surprising. But I
I
do
still
think
think he could be a good receiver in the right offense, but he can't be your number 2 guy anymore. Like, he needs to be kind of more of a situational player at this stage of his career, which is fine. And maybe that's what Seattle has planned for him, but he can't be the guy that gets 9 targets a game anymore.
And I think that's what we're starting to see, right? I think, like, it seems like Pete Carroll is picking up on that. And it seems like that's kind of coincided with this slow, but like very sure JSN breakout. And, I think if I'm the Tyler Lockett manager, I'm a little panicked. Obviously you still have like some touchdown upside on a week to week basis, but I do think, in terms of getting those sort of, you know, consistent boom games, that time is probably past here for Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, and I think for JSN, you're just waiting patiently. Maybe you started him as a flex play last night, but I do think big days are coming. You could see it's not hard to envision that he's going to be one of these receivers that gets you 8 for 85 every single game because of his role, because of him playing this in the slot. If you're patient here, I think you're going to be rewarded with some big JSN games, not only like next year, But down the stretch, they play some tough defenses coming up, including the 49ers next week. They play Philly after that. They play Pittsburgh. I think he's going to get a lot of targets in some of these games that could end up being some shootouts. Kate, let's do our favorite segment of the week. It is Promotion Commotion. Players that you should promote from your bench or maybe even your waiver wire into your starting lineup. We will do that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fastest and the easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total upfront so that you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Every day is on Monday. Kate and I will be back breaking down all of the action from Week 13. Make sure you tune in for that. But right now, it's our favorite segment of the week. It's Promotion Commotion. Kate, who are you promoting from your bench into your starting lineups this week?
Marcus, I have so many gross names for you this week, and
Cool.
we're just going to ride through them. So I just want to know, like, do you want the grossest one first or
Yes,
the
I
least
absolutely
gross?
do. Yes.
Okay, so the grossest might not be everybody's grossest, but it's going to be Kenny Pickett. Uh, you know, if you have been an everydayer, you know this already. If you are not, if you're new to the show, I don't like Kenny Pickett for fantasy, period. I don't see a lot of upside there, but Kenny Pickett, week 13 against the Arizona Cardinals, just come off as second most passing yards of his career. The Arizona Cardinals allowing the second highest touchdown percentage in the league, which is the perfect, cure for Kenny Pickett, who can't score touchdowns. Um, did I sell you? Are you starting Kenny
No.
Pickett?
Well, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. I know you hate the Steelers. All right. Next grossness. We're going to go with Devontae Parker, a wide receiver for the New England Patriots. And I know the Patriots are bad and the offense is bad. They're benching Mac Jones this week, it seems, in favor of Bailey Zappi. You have Demario Douglas, who I don't think is going to play with a concussion this week. Devontae Parker time, baby. And now they're going to face the Chargers, who are allowing the 4th most yards per game to opposing wide receivers. They've tied for the 4th most touchdowns allowed to the position this year. I think Devontae Parker could be a very viable flex play heading into week 13.
I like it. All right. I only got one name for you, Kate, but I'm going to
Okay.
make the case. I'm going to build up who this player is. So there is
Don't tell me it's A.T. Perry again. Don't do it.
But I was just a little early on A.T. Perry, who is going to get a start this week with Chris Olave and Michael Thomas out. There is a receiver out there, Kate, that is owned in only 4% of ESPN leagues right now, who has 17 targets over the last 2 weeks. That's kind of incredible, right? 17 targets. The number one receiver for this team is likely going to be out again this week. And they're facing a defense that gives up the 13th most points to fantasy receivers. This team is terrible at covering slot receivers. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't.
Greg Dortch is who I'm
Oh,
playing this
no.
week as a flex play. Listen, Greg Dortch, the last 2 weeks, because he hasn't played the first 9 weeks of the season, 6 for 76 against the Texans. Last week, he had 9 targets, did score a touchdown. I think against Pittsburgh without Hollywood Brown, who's dealing with a heel injury, I wouldn't be surprised to see him get close to double-digit targets in this game.
It wouldn't be very surprising. I do have questions though about the Steelers defense. They're looking a little bit healthier this week than in
But
weeks
who's the
prior,
slot
but
corner? Who's playing slot for Pittsburgh?
that's a great question, Marcus. It's been a bit of a revolving door at that point. Brevin Jordan, We're
Oh,
gonna
there we
close out the show.
Oh, gosh.
We're gonna close out the show with Brevin Jordan. Okay, tight end for the Houston Texans, in case you didn't know. The beautiful thing about Brevin Jordan, he might be available in the majority of your dynasty leagues
You
at this
think?
point. Yeah,
He's
like I'm
owning
gonna
0.1% of ESPN standard leagues right now.
Okay, so that's exactly how valuable this pick is going to be. Dalton Schultz, we've seen him have a huge role as a receiver in the Houston Texans offense. He's worked as the primary receiving tight end. Brevin Jordan, he's been banged up. He's missed a few games. But in the last 2 weeks, we've actually seen a decrease for Dalton Schultz's receiving snaps, routes run each of the last 2 weeks. Meanwhile, we've seen Brevin Jordan play a career high receiving routes or a year season high receiving routes run. And look, Marcus, we have Jordan, who I don't necessarily love as a player, but there could be a very interesting role in stock for him. Dalton Schultz popped up on the injury report this week, didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, I believe with a hamstring injury. It's a new injury. I have to assume, barring a miraculous recovery, if you're out for back-to-back practices heading into Friday, usually not a good sign, especially for a new injury. Now they get the Denver Broncos allowing just under 14 fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. That's a league high. This has been a very good matchup for opposing tight ends, where the Broncos, they've been kind of keying in on opposing wide receivers a little bit more in recent weeks. I think this might be like a top 7, top 8 tight end if Dalton Schultz is out this week, and he's probably available in like 100% of waivers.
Last one for me. Kate, would you say that a Super Bowl winning MVP quarterback against a bad defense in a dome is a good spot for like a QB2 in your
Are you
super flex
talking
league?
about Joe Flacco?
I'm just saying, like, there's a
Get
chance
out of here.
that there's a chance that Flacco has like 230 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game.
All
I'm
right.
just saying.
Hey, you know
We
what?
do.
YOLO, like YOLO. We're in dire
It's
straits here,
it's
folks.
either him or Bailey's. Who would you rather play this week? Him or Bailey Zappi? Zappi's going up against the Chargers, who can't stop anybody, or Flacco, who's almost 40 years old, playing the Rams.
Ew.
There's
I
like 18
probably
teams on a bye this week. Like, you probably need to start one of these guys if you're in a super flex league.
I might actually go with Zappy, but like
I'm kind of
I
fine with
understand there's some YOLO prospects to Joe Flacco where like he just don't care anymore.
yeah.
And like if he don't care and he's just gonna throw blindly down the field to Amari Cooper and David
Why
Njoku,
not?
like, hey, like there are worse players that you could target on YOLO balls in this league. So
So
maybe Joe
gross.
Flacco. I don't know.
Joe
This has been a
Flacco's
very gross
Yeah,
segment,
I
and I
mean,
love it.
Joe Flacco and Brevin Jordan are officially the worst names that we've ever mentioned in promotion commotion. That is it
Blessings.
for today's show. I love ending on that note. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. Check out our show on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Maju. Go check out our work at Pro Football Focus, and Behind the Steel Curtain. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy all of the games in week 13, and we will see you right back here on Monday.